Look at the front of that green can in your pantry. It says Parmesan. Big friendly letters, an Italian-sounding word, a little picture of a cheese wheel. And I need you to know that word is not a promise. It's a costume. Here's the part almost nobody stops to check. On an American label, the word Parmesan tells you nothing about where the cheese came from, how long it aged, or, in a few genuinely infamous cases, whether there was any real Parmesan in the can at all. The only name that actually guarantees any of that is the long one nobody bothers to say out loud, Parmigiano-Reggiano. What nobody realized until federal agents walked into a cheese factory in rural Pennsylvania on a cold day in 2012 was how far some of these brands had pushed it. Cans stamped 100% real Parmesan that a lab later found were partly made of wood pulp, some with no Parmesan in them whatsoever. So today I'm walking you through 6 brands sitting on that supermarket shelf right now that my Nana would put straight back, and then 3 that are worth every single cent you pay for them. Start with the word itself, because that's where the whole trick lives. Parmigiano-Reggiano has been a protected designation of origin in Europe since 1996. In plain terms, that means it can only be made in one defined stretch of northern Italy, the area around Parma, Reggio Emilia, Modena, and parts of Bologna and Mantua. The recipe is 3 ingredients: cow's milk, salt, and rennet. Nothing else goes into that wheel. No preservatives, no anti-caking powder, no cheaper filler cheese blended in to stretch it. And the control on it is genuinely obsessive. Every wheel is aged for months, then examined by an inspector from the governing consortium who taps the wheel with a little hammer and listens for flaws hiding inside. Only after it passes does the wheel get its name fire-branded around the rind. If it fails, they physically strip the identifying marks off the crust, so it can never be sold as the real thing. There are even middle grades. Wheels with small cosmetic faults get parallel grooves carved into the rind to mark them as second tier. The point is, someone real is standing behind every wheel, putting their stamp on it, on purpose. Europe takes all of this so seriously that in 2008, the European Court of Justice went a step further. In a case the Italian producers brought against Germany, the court ruled that inside the European Union, even the shortened word Parmesan can only go on cheese that is the genuine protected product. Germany had argued that Parmesan was just a generic word for hard grated cheese. The court disagreed and said the word Parmesan is an evocation of Parmigiano-Reggiano, close enough in sound and appearance that slapping it on an imitation misleads the shopper. That one ruling, officially on the books as Commission versus Germany, is why Kraft was later forced to pull its Parmesan branding off shelves across Europe. Over there, its cheese simply couldn't clear the bar. And the irony is thick, because by fighting to keep using the word, Germany had quietly grown into the second largest maker of so-called Parmesan in all of Europe. Now cross the ocean, because this is where it all comes apart. Here in the States, Parmesan is treated as a generic style word. There is a federal rule, a standard of identity, that says anything labeled Parmesan has to at least be real cheese, made from cow's milk and aged for a minimum stretch of around 10 months. But that is the entire bar. The name promises no Italy, no single inspected wheel, no tradition of any kind. So the strange situation you end up with is this. The fancy foreign name on the back of the good cheese is the one locked down tight by law. The plain English word on the front of the cheap can is the one almost anybody can print on almost anything. Now hold that Pennsylvania factory in the back of your mind, because that loophole in the word is the exact gap those FDA agents walked into. It was a warning sign the whole industry chose to ignore for years. And the prize for exploiting it is enormous, because Parmesan is the most imitated cheese on earth. The Italian consortium now spends real money chasing counterfeits around the globe, hiring brand protection firms, fighting trademark battles in country after country, all to defend a name that took centuries to build and about 6 seconds to fake on a label. It has chased down suspected counterfeits coming out of Ukraine and won rulings protecting the name as far away as Ecuador. It's a global game of whack-a-mole, and the countries that treat the word as generic are the easiest targets of all. There's one more idea to lock in before we start the countdown, and it's the most useful thing in this whole video. The danger zone is the pre-grated stuff. A whole wheel or a solid wedge is hard to fake because you can see the rind, feel the texture, read the branding right there in your hand. But the second cheese gets grated into a fluffy pile and poured into a tub. All of that evidence vanishes. Nobody can tell by looking whether that pile is aged Italian cheese or shredded white cheddar with powder mixed through it. That is why every single scandal we're about to go through lives in the grated aisle. And it isn't only the hard little cans. Those big bags of pre-shredded cheese lean on the very same anti-clumping powder to keep the strands loose. Once it's a fluffy pile in a tub, that kind of swap is almost impossible to catch by eye. Number 6. Kraft 100% grated Parmesan, the green can that is very possibly in your fridge door right now. Back in 2016, Bloomberg commissioned an independent laboratory to test store-bought grated Parmesan for something called cellulose. Cellulose is a powdery anti-clumping filler, and yes, it is commonly made from wood pulp, which is where every wood in your cheese headline came from. A small amount of it, somewhere in the 2 to 4% range, is legal and honestly pretty normal. It keeps the shreds from caking into one solid brick in the can. Kraft's sample came back at 3.8% cellulose. That number sits inside the legal line, so I want to be completely fair here. This is not a crime, and it is not poison. Cellulose is basically a tasteless powder that mostly just takes up space, and the real scare over eating wood was overblown. The trouble is a labeling one and a dilution one. The front of that can shout 100%, and 100% of anything should not have room left over for a wood-based filler. That gap between the claim and the contents is exactly what dragged Kraft into a consumer lawsuit after the report ran. Kraft Heinz, for its part, said it remained committed to the quality of its products. But the can still says 100%, with cellulose printed right there on the ingredient list. That's not a typo, by the way. Both of those things are true at the same time, on the same package. And to prove this isn't just how grated cheese has to be, look at the quiet control in that same Bloomberg test. The Whole Foods 365 store brand didn't even list cellulose on its label, and when the lab tested it, it came back at 0.3%. Basically a trace, the amount you'd expect from cross-contamination rather than a deliberate pour. So a company absolutely can put honest grated cheese in a tub without bulking it up. Plenty of them just choose not to. Number 5, Walmart's Great Value grated Parmesan, carrying that exact same 100% claim on the lid. Same Bloomberg investigation, same independent lab, and this sample came back noticeably higher at 7.8% cellulose. That's roughly double the top of the range considered normal for anti-caking. Then it moved out of the lab and into a courtroom. A shopper named Mark Moschetta sued Walmart in federal court in New York, and his complaint alleged the Great Value cheese ran as high as 10% cellulose. Sit with that claim for a second. 10% of a container that promises you, right there on the front, pure cheese. Walmart pushed back hard. saying its product met the federal standard of identity, that anti-caking aids are common and FDA approved, and that testing a single sample isn't statistically reliable. Those are all fair points a lawyer would make, and I'll grant them. Here's the twist that actually helps you, though. A lot of these 100% lawsuits ended up going nowhere because judges decided a reasonable shopper could just turn the can around and read the word cellulose on the ingredient list. In other words, the courts more or less ruled that the label protects the company, not you, as long as the truth is buried somewhere on the back, which tells you exactly where to look. Number 4. Essential Everyday Grated Parmesan, the store brand you'll spot at Jewel Osco and other Albertsons owned chains, again wearing the 100% badge on the front. Of every big national name Bloomberg sent to that laboratory, this is the one that tested the highest of them all, 8.8% cellulose. If this were a single bad batch on a single bad day, you could almost shrug it off. But that's exactly what started to bother investigators. It wasn't one lonely can. The same result kept surfacing across brand after brand, every one of them making the same pure cheese promise on the front, while the lab kept finding filler on the inside. The version most shoppers heard was just the scary wood pulp headline. The fuller picture, the pattern sitting underneath it, is the part that actually matters. And somehow, it gets worse from here. Quick pause before the worst 3, because this next part is the whole reason a channel like this one exists. If digging through the fine print like this saves you from buying wood-flecked cheese even once, that's the job done. So if that's useful to you, go ahead and subscribe. My Nana reads every label in the store like she's defusing a bomb, and by the end of this, you're gonna do the same thing. All right. Back to the shelf, because what these next 3 brands got caught doing makes a little extra cellulose look almost charming. Number 3, Target's Market Pantry Grated Parmesan. On the shelf, it looks like every other affordable store brand. Unremarkable, cheap, fine. But for years, a large share of that grated cheese was being produced by one single supplier, a company in rural Pennsylvania called Castle Cheese. And Castle is the actual reason the FDA showed up in the first place. Acting on a tip from someone on the inside, agents made a surprise visit to the Castle factory on a cold November day in 2012, and what they documented there is the whole reason we're having this conversation. The following summer, in a 2013 warning letter, the FDA put it in writing. The company's products were labeled as Parmesan and Romano, the letter said, but were in fact a mixture of something else entirely. And notice that word Romano sitting right next to Parmesan, because it carries the exact same loophole. It's another generic label with no origin behind it, which is why the same company could fake both at once. Somebody at that company had clearly understood how bad this was long before those agents ever pulled into the parking lot, and for years, they said nothing. Number 2, same supplier, a much wider blast radius. Castle Cheese wasn't only stocking Target's shelves. That same factory was also producing grated cheese sold under the Always Save and Best Choice labels, distributed through Associated Wholesale Grocers, which pushed those cans out into roughly 3,400 stores across 30 states. So picture the real scale of this. This was never one strange can in one strange town. One factory's product was sitting in thousands of stores at once, wearing a whole rack of different friendly-sounding store brand names, and almost nobody carrying it to the register had the faintest idea they were all buying the identical thing from the identical place. Most people never heard that part at all. Number 1, and this is the one my Nana has been furious about since the day it broke. When the FDA and Bloomberg finally pinned down what Castle was actually packing into those cans of supposed 100% real Parmesan, The answer was genuinely hard to believe. Some of it contained no Parmesan whatsoever. Instead of aged Italian-style cheese, the cans were filled with a blend of cheaper cheeses: Swiss, mozzarella, white cheddar, and Havarti, held together with cellulose, standing in for real Romano and real Parmesan. A product labeled as pure Parmesan, containing 0% Parmesan. And according to Bloomberg, Castle had been running a version of this for close to 30 years. Castle's president, Michel Murder, agreed to plead guilty to criminal charges, facing up to a year in prison and a fine of $100,000, and the company eventually filed for bankruptcy. Then came the number that should make you go check your own kitchen right now. Neil Schumann, who runs Arthur Schumann Incorporated, the largest seller of hard Italian cheese in the entire country, estimated that around 20% of that whole category is mislabeled in some way. 1 in 5. You'd think that somewhere along a chain that long, across that many stores, over that many years, one person would have stood up and said something. Nobody did. So there's your 6. And if you're standing in the aisle right now feeling a little betrayed by a can of cheese, good. That's the correct and healthy reaction. Here's the better news. The fix is genuinely simple, and there are real cheeses out there worth every cent you hand over for them. Here are 3 of them. The first is the king. The cheese so good, the whole rest of the world started faking its name. Real Parmigiano-Reggiano. When you buy it as a wedge with the rind still attached, look closely at that rind because it works like a signature. The genuine article has its name spelled out in tiny pin dots pressed into the crust. Parmigiano-Reggiano repeating over and over next to a number identifying the exact dairy that made it, a production date, and the letters DOP. On the plastic or paper wrapper, you'll find a red and yellow seal and the words made in Italy. And even the pre-grated tubs of the real stuff carry that same seal, so you can buy it already shredded and still be safe. Flip it over and the ingredient list runs 3 items long: milk, salt, rennet. Here's a detail worth knowing. That full name, Parmigiano-Reggiano, is actually protected on American shelves too, unlike the loose word Parmesan. So only cheese that passed the real inspection is even allowed to wear it. The cheese is usually aged somewhere between 12 months and 3 years, and the aging is where the quality gap really opens up. Remember, an American only has to clear a 10-month minimum to earn the word Parmesan. A serious wheel of the real thing is sitting there for 24 months or more, developing flavor the shortcut versions never get near. Those tiny, crunchy crystals you find in a great piece aren't a flaw either. They're amino acids, tyrosine and leucine, forming slowly as the cheese matures. And here's some reassurance if the deli counter feels intimidating. When America's Test Kitchen ran a supermarket tasting, their overall winner was simply a real imported Parmigiano-Reggiano wedge sold under a mainstream brand you already know from the deli case. You don't need a specialty shop for any of this. You just need to find that branded rind. Yes, the sticker price per pound is higher, but you use a fraction of the amount because the flavor is that concentrated, and don't throw the rind away when you're done. Drop it into a soup or a sauce and it melts out a deep, savory broth for free. If you change only one thing after this video, make it this: buy the piece with the rind still on it. The second is proof you don't need a plane ticket to Italy to eat properly. Sartori SarVecchio, made in Antigo, Wisconsin. This is not shaker dust in a can. It's a real block of hard aging cheese, extra aged for at least 20 months, roughly twice as long as most other domestic Parmesans, and rubbed down with olive oil while it matures. The ingredient list is honest and short. Milk, cultures, salt, enzymes. It's made by a master cheesemaker using milk from local patron farms, some of which have supplied that same creamery for generations, so the milk barely travels before it becomes cheese. And it genuinely holds its own. Back in 2009, SarVecchio was named the single best cheese made in America at the United States Championship Cheese Contest, beating out more than 1,300 other entries to take the top prize. And it has kept collecting awards ever since. America's Test Kitchen ranked it their favorite domestic Parmesan, right on the heels of the imported Italian wheels. It gives you that same crumbly, nutty, crystal-flecked bite, usually for a little less money than the import. This is the one to reach for on the nights when a genuine Italian wedge feels like too much of a splurge. Same idea, made honestly, a whole lot closer to home. The third is the smart money pick, and it's the cheese plenty of Italians themselves grab when they're cooking a big pot of something rather than staging a fancy tasting. Grana Padano. It is also a protected designation of origin cheese, made under its own separate consortium, with its own diamond-shaped mark fire-branded right into the rind. It's aged a little less time than the King, usually around 18 months, so it comes out a touch milder and softer, and it's meaningfully cheaper. In one taste test lineup, the Grana Padano ran about $11 a pound, while a real 20-month Parmigiano-Reggiano sat closer to $13, and a 3-year aged wheel pushed $16. That word grana just means grainy, a nod to the crystalline texture these aging cheeses share. When you're melting it into a risotto or stirring it through a sauce, most people honestly cannot tell you didn't use Parmigiano-Reggiano, and your grocery bill absolutely can. Real cheese, real rules, a real inspected rind at a friendlier price. There is no shame whatsoever in keeping a wedge of this in the fridge for everyday cooking, and plenty of Italian home cooks do exactly that. Which brings us right back to that green can and its big friendly promise. 100%. Now you know what that number was quietly carrying for the better part of 30 years. And the good news is the counter move takes about 6 seconds in the aisle. Flip the package over, actually read the ingredient list, and if you want a real guarantee instead of a printed word, buy the piece that still has the branded rind attached. The word on the front was never the promise. The stamp burned into the rind always was. And if you think grated cheese is the only aisle in that store running this exact costume trick, wait until you see what they've been doing to the words extra virgin, one shelf over in the olive